Hello guys, and now we are going to see the second game in the Fischer-Sozin system in the Scheveningen variation of the Sicilian, and this game is a model game for white, and the game is played between Hennings, and black is played by Moring in 1967. The game goes e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, cd4, knight takes d4, d6, and knight c3, e6, and bishop e3, knight f6, and bishop c4, and now bishop e7 and queen e2. The queen is best placed here. White aims to get his king out of the center quickly with long castles, after which the rook is immediately going to enjoy the benefits of the d file. The other benefits of this square rather than d2 is that it protects the g4 square, stopping a knight incursion there by black, and enabling g4 push. Queen d2 is also possible here, but knight g4 can sometimes be a worry for white. Now castle shot, long castles, and queen c7. Black should take his queen off the d file in case of accidents. Bishop b3, a6, g4. Now no more dawdling but immediate action. b5. Black begins his own counterplay. Both players would have been well aware of the considerations surrounding the thematic capture on d4. Here knight takes d4. I'm sorry. Here knight takes d4, and now praxis shows that the best reaction is likely rook takes d4, and now e5 can be met with rook to c4. Now queen d8 and g5, and after knight d7, now h4, queuing up an exchange sacrifice. Now b5. Now it seems rook takes c8 is a handy little exchange. In return for his material investment, white would obtain absolute control over the d5 square and the elimination of the only possible rival for the a2 g8 diagonal, which is open and therefore extremely useful for him. The bishop on b3 will likely be transformed into a monster. Here even rook b4 also gives white quite good prospects, and after rook takes c8, now rook takes c8 and knight d5 can be played. So then if at all, the usual bishop takes d4 invites e5, and in particular here this is a pawn sacrifice. e5, now bishop e3, now bishop takes g4 and f3, and bishop to e6. White obtains some compensation in the form of the open g file, but this is generally considered not such a great way to play. But in the game, black played b5, now g5, now knight takes d4. This is basically forced, but now white bishop will be quite active on d4. The problem with retreating immediately with the king's knight is that white has a trick by means of which a large advantage can be obtained. If at all knight d7 is played, now there is knight d5, and after e takes d5, now knight takes c6, queen takes c6, and then bishop takes d5. The rook on a8 is skewered. After knight d7 and knight d5, and knight takes c, and knight d7, knight d5, e d5, and after knight takes c6, and even the relatively better knight to e5 leads to a very depressing position after knight takes e5, d takes e5, and bishop takes d5, when white has as we like to say, the pawn and the compensation. So that's why first knight takes d4 should be played, and then after bishop takes d4, now knight d7, now rook h g1, now knight to c5. This knight move is played a lot, but maybe black's play after this is too slow. Lots of games can now continue b4, which is definitely an important alternative. So now queen to h5. With this very aggressive queen move, white makes his intentions clear. In addition to a few other tactical ideas, we can see that he almost certainly wants uh, rook to g3, which then strongly threatens rook h3. Now b4, the interesting thing in that this position has been reached on the board many times in practice, with incredible results for white. So how should he begin the attack? First bishop to f6. This move is considered to be the correct continuation of white's attack. The intention is to be able to play the rather picturesque queen h6 straight afterwards, and here the engine shows queen h6, and now e5, and then knight to d5, gh6, and then knight takes c7, check, or even knight d5 if at all this is played. Now rook takes this, uh, here even knight to d5 is natural. but the sacrifice is not correct, because after e takes d5 and then bishop takes d5, now black has at his disposal the super accurate knight to e6, which nets two pieces for the rook, with which white is almost certainly about to take. Now after bishop takes a8, bishop takes a8, and now knight takes d4, rook takes d4, and queen to a7. The attack is at an end, and the material balance favors black. Another try which white can use to start the attack is queen to h6, but black has this e5 move. So after this, queen h5, now b4, and bishop f6 was played in the game, and now rook e8. After this move, as with all others, white mobilizes his g1 rook. We should also investigate other rook moves like rook to d8, rook to d8, now rook g3 and bc3, now rook to h3, and now h6 is forced, but now there comes a lightning strike deep in the heart of black's camp, that is queen takes h6, because after gh6 there is rook takes h6, bishop takes f6, gf6, and there is no longer any meaningful defense against rook g1 check, followed by rook h8 mate. So the king cannot go there, so there is no defense because the f pawn is blocked. So here after the queen takes h6, now knight to d3 check, and then cd3 and cb2 check, and king takes b2. Here black resigned in a game played in 1974. If at all black takes bc3 here, then he is also put to the sword by the immediate queen h6. So now in the game rook e8 was played, and after rook g3, white is no longer especially interested in the knight on c3, because black's defenses hold on. After knight a4, knight takes b3, ab3, and e5. If at all queen h6, Then there is mm, bishop to f8. So after rook e8, rook g3 is correct. After bc3, rook h3, cb2. If at all bishop to f8 is played, there is again rook h3, and after h6 there is gh6, and but white is winning here. So cb3, I mean bc3, rook h3, and cb2. Once again h6, if at all h6 will lead to the same thing. So after king b1, now bishop takes f6, gf6, king f8. The black king is forced to flee. White just needs to find the clincher. If at all gf6, here the key move is queen h6. And this, and there is rook g1. And after king f8, there is rook takes g5, and queen to d8, rook g8, king takes g8, and queen h6. And then next comes queen rook to g3. So gf6 is not correct. After king f8, now e5. The very strongest continuation perhaps is f takes g7. And now if at all king e7, now rook to f3, rook f3, and king d8. Now queen g5 check, and queen e7. Then rook takes d6, king to c7, and queen takes c5. But in the game actually e5 was played, and then after knight e4, if at all gf6 is played, now queen h6 is the best, and after king e7, queen takes f6, after king d7, rook takes d6, and it is winning the queen. After knight e4, fg7 check, king e7, and queen h4 check, f6, queen takes e4, after d5, now queens, and after rook takes g8, now queen takes h7 check, and black resigned here. Guys, I hope you would have enjoyed the game, and these are all model games, guys. So these are precisely uh, chosen for showing you how to play from the white side uh, against the Sicilian Scheveningen with the Fischer Sozin attack. So in the next two games I'll be showing you for black side. So thank you all.